Unexpectedly excluded from Christmas dinner, I discovered the power of kindness. With my last $50, Jake balanced the phone between his shoulder and ear as he wiped grease from his hands. "What do you mean we aren't invited?" he asked, disbelief tightening his chest. His mother's voice droned on, filled with excuses about the number of guests and limited space, but all he could focus on was the hollow pit forming in his stomach. Lily, with her bright eyes and hopeful smile, had been looking forward to the Christmas dinner at Grandma's. Now, the vision of family gathered around the table, laughter ringing in the air, shattered like glass. Anger wrestled with disappointment, and the suffocating weight of isolation pressed down like an unwelcome blanket. As the call ended, the silence in the garage felt deafening. He swallowed, trying to rationalize the pain, but the sadness clawed at him. Was he really that easily forgotten? After years of being the reliable son, a devoted father, he found himself grappling with the cold burn of rejection. A single tremor rippled through his thoughts as he remembered Lily considering decorations with excitement, their own little tradition. Now they were on the outside looking in. Determined not to let his daughter see his turmoil, he clutched the last $50 in his pocket as he walked to the local grocery store, cultivating a fragile resolve. Dread coiled tightly in his chest. The numbers didn't add up, but he pushed the worrying thoughts aside. He could make it work, just a simple pot pie to capture the warmth of home, dollops of chicken and creamy sauce, a buttery crust. He knew it brought Lily comfort, and that was all that mattered. Jake's hands trembled as he stood in the aisles, scanning for ingredients, his mind racing through worries of unseen expenses lurking just ahead. Could he really make this day special? A spark of hope flickered as he gathered the necessities, but the reality of his dwindling funds loomed large. What if this wasn't enough to create the magic of Christmas he had envisioned for his daughter? He returned home, groceries in hand, but a heavy heart. As he stirred the mixture in the pot, the flavor of nostalgia danced at the edges of his memory, but guilt started to settle in like a ghost. In the silence, he caught a glimpse of Mrs. Thompson on her porch, her usual sparkle dimmed by the harsh winter chill. Loneliness emanated from her like an aura, and Jake hesitated, pondering whether he should let the season pass silently. Then, unexpectedly, he felt a pulse of kindness surge within him. What if he invited her to share his meager meal? Before he could talk himself out of it, the words spilled forth. "Mrs. Thompson, would you like to join us for dinner?" As her eyes lit with surprise, joy flooded back into her expression, and Jake felt a flicker of warmth in the icy air. But beneath that warmth lay a tremor of uncertainty, a whisper of doubt he pushed away. Would this simple act really fill the void left by his family's exclusion? Would it ease the growing doubts he harbored about his own worth? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a shaky breath, he set the table for two, but anxiety teased at the periphery, muted murmurs of uncertainty clawing at him. They shared stories over the modest meal, their laughter filling the room, but Jake couldn't shake off the lingering shadow of distrust. What did it all mean? He felt an undeniable thread of connection weaving through their conversation, yet the truth of his exclusion gnawed at him, refusing to let him savor the moment fully. Just as the warmth of hospitality swelled, Mrs. Thompson revealed a secret, one that intertwined their familial paths in perplexing ways. Jake's heart raced, a whirlwind of emotion tearing through him. Before he could process it, a knock shattered the moment. Jake stopped, the air thick with anticipation. Who stood on the other side? Could it be family seeking reconciliation, or would it deepen the void already forged in his heart? He hesitated, his hand hovering over the doorknob, caught in the grip of hope and dread as he confronted the unknown. Taking a deep breath, Jake grasped the doorknob, uncertainty flooding his mind. His heart thudded loudly, drowning out the muffled sounds behind him, the echo of laughter and warmth shared with Mrs. Thompson now tinged with trepidation. The knock was insistent, demanding resolution. He opened the door, revealing a figure wrapped in shadows, a silhouette of a person he hadn't expected. "Jake?" The voice was soft, familiar yet foreign. It was his sister, Sarah. Years had passed since they had shared a genuine conversation, strained by misunderstandings and family divides. Conflicted emotions warred within him. The sudden reminder of family struck with a force that nearly knocked the breath from his lungs. "Sarah?" he muttered, scanning her face for clues. There was a tentative smile, but it felt fragile, as if she were afraid to shatter the moment altogether. The air around them thickened with nostalgia, pain, and hope. "Can we talk?" she asked, her eyes darting nervously over his shoulder. The invitation to dinner loomed larger suddenly, casting Mrs. Thompson into the background as Jake's thoughts spiraled. "Sure, but—" He hesitated, glancing back toward Mrs. Thompson, who had been in the midst of sharing something deeply personal. The guilt weighed heavily on him again. "I didn't expect anyone else." "Is that your dinner?" Sarah inclined her head toward the kitchen, the aroma wafting through the door. "I can't just interrupt, can I?" His heart sank. This meeting bore the potential for reconciliation, but also threatened to expose the fissures in his own inadequacies. "It's a simple meal. Mrs. Thompson is here too," he admitted, lowering his voice, letting the vulnerability roll off his tongue like an unguarded confession. A flicker of understanding passed over Sarah's face, yet she took a step back, allowing both the entrance and the conversation to hover in uncertain space. "Maybe we should reschedule," she suggested, though the hint of disappointment lingered in her tone. That made him ache too, but he wasn't ready to retreat. "Please come in," he offered, his mouth moving before thought could intervene. "You could join us. It's not a big deal, really." As Sarah stepped over the threshold, Jake felt the weight of hope blossoming amidst the chaos. He turned to Mrs. Thompson, who met his gaze and acknowledged the change with an encouraging nod. It was a signal to embrace the vulnerability of this familial moment, perhaps the very opportunity to bridge the gaps that had formed. They all gathered around the small table, an unlikely trio woven together by strands of shared yet separate experiences. Laughter ebbed back into the atmosphere as stories unfolded. It felt surreal to sit there, swapping memories like currency, yet there was an undeniable tension in the air. "I get it now," Jake cautiously broke through a light-hearted anecdote, addressing Sarah. "Things between us, the family, it's been broken for too long. We can't just ignore it anymore." His sister's gaze pierced him, a mixture of apology and longing. "I tried reaching out, and then I stopped. I didn't know how to fix things, Jake," she confessed, her voice trembling with vulnerability. The acknowledgement landed squarely on his chest. Could they truly mend this fractured connection? As laughter turned to silence, that one question lingered between them, begging for resolution. Just as Jake opened his mouth to respond, a sudden realization washed over him. The complexity of his feelings mirrored the unease in their exchanges, and he understood that they were all caught in a web of isolation. "Sarah, I need to know what happened that night when I got left behind. Why was I the one forgotten?" The silence buzzed around them like a muted earthquake, the walls seemingly alive with the weight of unresolved emotions. As their faces paled, the truth teetered on the edge, knocking against the confines of years gone by. The answer loomed large, capable of rehashing old wounds or knitting new bonds. With the conversation hanging precariously, he realized they stood at a precipice, both ready and terrified to leap into the unknown. What truth awaited him, lurking beneath the surface, poised to reshape everything he thought he knew about his family? As he steeled himself for what Sarah might reveal, the shadows of doubt gave way to burgeoning resolve. Jake's heart raced, a mixture of anticipation and fear threading through him. As he searched Sarah's face for signs, anything to give him an idea of what lay behind her hesitation, he felt the urge to grab a lifeline, anchor himself in the tumultuous sea of family dynamics. "Jake, Her voice trailed off, and he sensed she was grappling for the right words, words that could either bridge the gap or widen it further. He leaned in, tension knitting his brow. "Just say it, Sarah. We can't move forward without facing it," he urged, his own voice steadier than he felt inside. He was surprised by the resolve surging within him, a resolve that had seemed dormant for years. Perhaps the act of confronting this moment was what he had subconsciously longed for, a chance not only to understand, but to rewrite the narrative that had so long dictated their relationship. "I've been carrying this for so long," she murmured, eyes reflecting a storm of conflicted emotions. "Mom and Dad, they were arguing that night. They said things they didn't mean. When you were lost," she hesitated, the pain weighing her down. "I didn't know you were in there. I thought everyone was out safe. I was terrified I'd failed you. I should have looked for you." The words struck him like a blow. The years of silence unraveled before him as Sarah's admission unraveled layers of self-blame he hadn't vocalized. He had felt abandoned, yes, but he hadn't realized that she, too, had been encased in a cage of guilt. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he asked, the frustration boiling beneath the surface. How had silence become their default? The longer they avoided honesty, the more entrenched in pain they had become. "I didn't know how. I thought it would hurt you more," she replied, looking vulnerable yet resolute. "But in not saying anything, I hurt you more than I ever intended to." This awareness sparked something in him. They had been living in separate silos of hurt, encasing their pain as if dealing with it was a burden too great to place on one another's shoulders. But she had started to unveil the truth. Perhaps they both could begin to heal. "Don't you see? We both participated in this silence," he urged, tension palpable in his limbs. His heart softened as he realized this wasn't just a confrontation, but a communion of sorts. "We can't change the past, but we can change moving forward." A gentle nod from Sarah agreed with his sentiment, yet Jake could sense her need for reassurance. He had forged himself in resilience, a skill honed by years of navigating his emotions alone, yet the weight of familial connection had never seemed so vital as it did now. "Let's figure this out together," he said, the words washing over an unseen chasm that had been filled with resentment and pain. "I don't want to feel this disconnection anymore. I want to know your side, your life. I want to rebuild." As if she had been waiting for this cue, Sarah took a deep breath. "I went to therapy, hoping to understand my feelings surrounding that night and our family. I learned a lot about impacts of silence, what it does to us, and how we can break free. Maybe this can be our first step?" Jake felt the foundations of their relationship shift. Clarity began to polish the tarnished memories he had nursed for too long. The opportunity lay before them like an open door. Could he truly embrace the discomfort for the sake of healing? They exchanged tentative smiles, the understood urgency of moving forward apparent in their eyes. It was as if they had taken the first hesitant steps on a new path together, a trail of rediscovery paved with understanding, vulnerability, and the courage to confront the past. Just as a sense of promise took root, the doorbell rang, the sound breaking the fragile silence, sending a jolt through the trio. The distractions of the outside world threatened to encroach once more. Jake glanced at Sarah's expression. Was it fear or excitement flickering there? Whatever it was, it ignited his own curiosity. Who could it be, and how might this unexpected visitor alter their fresh start? As he approached the door, a complex mix of hope and apprehension solidified within him. His journey of personal development was just beginning, but the threads of family ties were already being woven anew, just beyond that door. Jake's hand hesitated on the doorknob, heart thrumming with uncertainty. What awaited him on the other side? He braced himself as he swung the door open, revealing an unfamiliar face. A woman in her 50s stood there, her eyes shifting between surprise and recognition. "Are you Jake?" she asked, her voice tinged with hesitation, yet carrying some sort of urgency. "Yeah, I'm Jake. Do I know you?" he replied, the curiosity battling the caution woven into his voice. "I'm Lydia, a friend of your parents," she replied, her smile familiar yet strained, adding a sense of discomfort. "I know this is an awkward time, but I need to talk to you. It's important." Jake felt a flicker of annoyance mixed with intrigue. He glanced back at Sarah, whose expression mirrored his own hesitation. There was a ripple of energy in the air, a tension threading through the moment that felt almost tangible. "Why don't you come in?" Jake offered, stepping aside. He could sense the undercurrents of his unresolved issues with Sarah pulling at the edges of this unexpected encounter. Once inside, Lydia settled in the chair opposite them, perching slightly on the edge. Jake noted her fidgeting fingers. Anxiety radiated from her posture, and he couldn't help but anticipate a revelation that might alter their fragile family dynamics once more. "Listen, I don't have a lot of time. I wanted to share something about that night, the fire," she began, glancing nervously between Jake and Sarah. "There's more to the story than what you've been told." Jake's instincts kicked in as he straightened, the conversation shifting from healing to the weight of unresolved truths. "What do you mean?" he pressed, his voice firm but carefully measured. "Your parents, they were dealing with more than just the flames. There were decisions being made, untold consequences that they didn't want you two to bear witness to. The arguments, it all stemmed from something deeper. They thought shielding you would protect you." "Shielding us?" Sarah interjected, her voice sharp with disbelief. "They kept us in the dark while we lost everything." "I know. And that's what I'm here to help with. I've worked closely with your mom, and there are things she has never disclosed, not even to you." Jake's mind raced as Lydia spoke. Every word nudged the tight grip of anger and confusion within him. He could feel the walls of their newly opened dialogues threatened by the collapse of a deeper truth. "Was it about our safety?" he demanded, frustration creeping into his tone. More excuses for their silence? Lydia strengthened her gaze, unwavering. "It's about their guilt, about not having made the right choices. I believe you deserve to hear this so you can truly begin to heal." He clenched his fists, a bitter taste of resentment weaving through him. The patterns of duplicity lay once again before him, unraveling everything he thought he had begun to understand. "So tell us," Jake urged, leaning forward. "What really happened?" As Lydia opened her mouth to respond, the doorbell rang again, cutting through the charged atmosphere. The shift knocked Jake back, away from the brink of confrontation. Gritting his teeth, he shot a glance at Sarah. Their journey toward healing felt perilously close to being derailed by fresh revelations. With a sense of urgency clawing at him, he moved toward the door once more, his heartbeat steadying with a new resolve. Whoever stood beyond this threshold might possess answers, or perhaps even serve as a catalyst, forcing him to confront the turmoil that swirled within the shattered remnants of his family. Jake grasped the handle, bracing himself for whatever or whoever lay beyond it. That moment, laden with potential and impending revelation, could either deepen the chasm or guide them further along their path toward understanding. Would he emerge from it stronger, or would it deepen the fractures already so delicately masked by new beginnings? The answer awaited just past his fingertips. Jake opened the door, revealing a tall figure dressed in a neatly pressed suit, the late afternoon light casting a golden hue upon him. The man's slicked-back hair and polished shoes spoke of a disciplined life. As he stepped forward, Jake could feel the weight of expectation in the air, thickening it with anxiety. "Mr. Harrison, I presume?" the man inquired, his voice firm yet courteous. "I'm Daniel, a family attorney." The mention of his parents hit Jake like a punch to the gut. "What's this about?" he asked, a sensation of dread spiraling within him. He could feel Sarah's gaze boring into the back of his head, shared tension knitting their fates together more tightly than before. "May I come in?" Daniel asked, his demeanor unwavering as he glanced toward Lydia, who remained seated, eyes darting between Jake and this new arrival. Jake stepped aside, allowing him entry, the atmosphere inside the house growing more charged with every passing second. As Jake closed the door, he half expected the walls to close in around him. He could almost sense history pulling him back, urging him to step away from the painful present and into comfortable ignorance. Yet that internal tug-of-war only fueled his determination to push forward. He needed answers, and he needed them now. "Thank you," Daniel said, taking a seat. "I know this is unusual for you, but I'm here to discuss the estate of your parents." Jake felt the room shrink as the word estate loomed large. It held a connotation that felt both foreign and overwhelmingly familiar. Lydia shifted in her chair, her expression caught between concern and anticipation, the lines on her face deepening with each heartbeat. Jake found himself absorbing the power dynamics in play, who was law and who was family. Nothing felt certain anymore. "I need you to understand that I'm here to ensure your interests are represented," Daniel asserted, his voice steady. "Your parents wanted to protect you, but some choices they made might not have been in your best interest." He pulled out a folder, and Jake's heart raced, a fleeting current of dread coursing through him. "What do you mean?" Jake pressed, his voice sharper than intended. "What did they do?" "Let's just say there are assets and liabilities you are not currently aware of. Your parents were trying to store up some wealth for you, but it didn't quite turn out how they planned," Daniel replied, shifting through documents. "You think we're going to inherit a fortune?" Jake challenged, disbelief threading through his tone. The authenticity of their family collapsing under the weight of secrets left his mind spinning. Memories of a so-called normal childhood juxtaposed against the impending reality of debt and disappointment. Daniel's face remained impassive, though empathy flickered in his eyes. "It's complicated. The financial aspects are just part of the picture. When we get to the settlement, there are matters of your parents' choices, issues that might rattle the perception of who they were." The very notion of his parents being anything but perfect felt like a betrayal. Jake's urge to retreat flooded back, but an inner voice urged him to confront this new reality. They had hidden whatever shadows lurked in their past. Now, though, he felt the weight of responsibility to ensure their decisions would not cloud his future. "What is the first step?" Jake asked, his determination reigniting. "You'll need to meet with the estate executor and go through the legal process. I can help prepare you for that," Daniel offered, no trace of discomfort dancing in his voice. Jake nodded, feeling the burden of an unexpected awakening. This prompted a question he would always wrestle with. How much of his parents' legacy could he reshape or reclaim? The conversation had shifted dramatically, pulling those old family tensions closer to the surface. With every revelation, he felt a flicker of empowerment, challenging his dependency on others' narratives about his life. "Let's do it," he said, his voice steadier now, holding the same conviction that had kindled in him since Lydia arrived. "I want to know everything." As Jake resumed his place in the circle of confrontation, he realized barriers were being shattered. The process of rediscovering himself was active, and there would be much to face ahead. Yet with that step forward also came the chilling awareness that understanding his parents' decisions might require unraveling threads that could lead to emotional upheaval, testing the very foundation he had built for himself. Jake caught sight of Lydia's nod of support, which solidified his resolve. Whatever awaited around the next corner, he was ready to dive headfirst into the complicated mess that was his legacy, even if it meant discovering truths darker than he anticipated. The past loomed closer, and suddenly he knew the time had come to face the choices his parents had made. But would he be prepared for the ghosts they left behind? Jake felt an unsettling mix of trepidation and determination. The gravity of Daniel's words lingered in the air as he set the pace for what lay ahead. He had agreed to unearth the hidden truths surrounding his parents' estate, but the thoughts gnawed at him. How could he manage revelations that might reshape his entire perception of his family? As he sat down at the table across from Daniel, a sense of urgency ignited in him. This wasn't just about the financial implications anymore. It was about reclaiming the narrative of his life. He needed to confront the past head-on, not for its sake, but for his own growth and understanding. "What's next, then?" Jake asked, his fingers drumming against the table, a tactile reminder of his restless energy. Daniel opened the folder, revealing a constellation of paperwork, each sheet emblazoned with the weight of significance. "You'll first want to gather your parents' financial documents, bank statements, property deeds, anything relating to their assets, before we can proceed with the executors' meeting." Jake's heart raced at the thought of going through his parents' belongings. They had always seemed so steadfast, so unwaveringly successful in his eyes. What if those documents revealed deeper flaws? "Let's start right here," Jake proposed, a decision crystallizing in his mind. "I want to review what I have at home, and then we can schedule a meeting with the executor." Daniel nodded, a glimmer of acknowledgement in his eyes. "I'll be here for any questions. This process can be labyrinthine, but you are not alone." Resolute, Jake stood up, his mind already cataloging the items they might find. "Lydia, want to come with me? It might be tough to sort through everything alone." He spoke the words aloud, but internally he needed her presence, someone to ground him in the tempest of uncertainty swirling within. "Of course," she replied, her voice steady and reassuring. Together they walked home, the late afternoon light casting long shadows, a mirror of the lingering doubts cropping up in his mind. Once inside, Jake was instantly assailed by memories, the family photos decorating the walls, the framed awards on the shelves, trophies that had once seemed like symbols of victory. They were now artifacts wrapped in an unsettling authenticity. "This is more than just paperwork," he muttered, slightly overwhelmed as they made their way to the study where his parents used to work. "It's about rediscovering them, who they were beneath all this success." Lydia nodded, her eyes scanning the room. "And who you are, Jake. This might be an opportunity to redefine your understanding." With a deep breath, Jake opened the cabinet doors, revealing boxes filled with documents. Dust swirled into the air as he pulled out the first box, memories colliding with the present. "I can't shake this feeling of betrayal," he admitted, vulnerability creeping into his voice. They felt so perfect, as if they knew all the right choices to make. Did they? Lydia's question hung in the air, challenging him to confront the idealized image he'd built up over the years. Jake rifled through the papers beneath his fingertips. Receipts, old tax documents, and then, sharp as a knife, a handwritten letter addressed to him. Heart racing, he opened it, needing to see if this could serve as a bridge to the truth. "Dear Jake," it began, his parents' distinctive penmanship glaring back at him. As he read, recognition hit. A blend of advice, love, uncertainty, and caution intertwined within the lines. Suddenly, the emotional barriers he had fortified began to give way. It wasn't just about discovering flaws. It was also about understanding their struggles, their desires, and ultimately how they shaped his own life. "Is this what it feels like to step into their shoes?" he mused aloud, each word laden with an acknowledgement of his evolving perspective. Lydia crossed the room, placing her hand on his shoulder. "You're growing, Jake. This isn't just about them anymore. It's about you confronting the reality of your life, too." With renewed determination, he started clearing off the desk, sifting through each layer of ignored history, as if peeling back the layers of a long-buried treasure chest. As dusk settled outside, casting deep blues through the window, Jake felt an unsettling mix of liberation and anxiety. He understood that digging deeper into his parents' past would require grappling with discomfort, but it also meant liberating himself from the facade that their perfection had built. The growing weight of discovery hung in the air as he realized the depth of their humanity, It emboldened him, but also unsettled the ground beneath him. Yet stepping forward meant he could not only confront their ghosts, but would also encounter his own. What other truths awaited him just beneath the surface? The shadows shifted, whispering of hidden insights yet to emerge. With every unraveling layer, he sensed the line between his past and future growing thinner, provoking a suspenseful question in the silence. Who would he become once all the truths were laid bare? With the failing light of dusk seeping deeper into the room, Jake felt the air grow heavier with each page he sifted through. The handwritten letter lingered at the front of his mind, its contents pulling him further from the safe distance he had battled to maintain with his parents' memories. For years, he'd viewed them as paragons of virtue, unblemished by the imperfections he now sensed beneath the surface. This rediscovery felt like an echo of his own hidden complexities, leaving him breathless and raw. "Do you think it's normal to feel this way?" Jake asked Lydia, hope and doubt mingling in his tone. "To question everything I thought I knew?" Lydia considered him for a moment, her brow furrowing thoughtfully. "Normal? Maybe. It's a big shift to see your parents as real people with flaws, just like any of us. But what you're feeling could also be a critical turning point for you." Jake exhaled slowly, processing her words. There was a liberating truth in acknowledging his parents' humanity, yet it also left a gaping vulnerability within him. What did it mean to redefine this narrative? He was no longer merely a reflection of their successes. He was faced with the task of carving out his own identity amid the rubble of their idealized perfection. He plunged further into the cabinets, digging through old financial ledgers and statements like a historian unveiling buried artifacts. Each piece uncovered deepened confusion, but also a compelling urge to confront reality. A sense of clarity surged as he saw manifests of their struggles, possibly debts, unforeseen woes mistaken for confidence, etched in ink like unspoken confessions. "I found something," he announced suddenly, pulling out a worn envelope sealed with a small piece of tape, the evidence clearly harboring more than just bills. Inside was a collection of letters, each one far more poignant than the financial statements surrounding them, detailing dreams his parents had once carried, plans they had made. They spoke of aspirations often overshadowed by the grind of daily life. His heart raced as he skimmed through, absorbing the raw emotion buried beneath words far too familiar, yet strangely alien. They were just human after all. They made mistakes. They worried, he murmured. "This makes me feel like I've been living in a fairy tale all along." "Maybe they wanted you to hold on to that fairy tale," Lydia pointed out gently, "as a way to protect you. But living in that space means you're missing out on understanding your own path, Jake." Her insight stabbed through his defenses. He was at a crossroads, balancing between the identity he had crafted based on their molds and the person he was beginning to recognize in the shadows, the one who could appreciate both their triumphs and shortcomings. Jake turned to Lydia, determination flashing in his eyes. "I need to confront the executor soon. If we're going to face the truth, I can't go in there with rose-colored glasses. I have to understand everything. I need to ask the right questions." "We'll prepare together," she reassured, a newfound fire igniting within them both. "This is your chance, not just to learn about them, but also to dive into who you are becoming." Together, they sat amongst the boxes and papers littering the desk, crafting questions that stemmed from curiosity and a hunger for truth. For Jake, the stakes felt higher than any business matter. It was about reclaiming ownership over his family narrative, about aligning his future with the reality of his past. As he drafted his questions, Jake noticed a recurring theme: the juxtaposition of fear and ambition. Would he have the courage to confront the complexities, to embrace the vulnerabilities they represented? Each stroke of the pen bridged his parents' stories with his own, turning the whispering shadows into guiding lights. The walls of the study felt different now, no longer just echoes of his childhood, but a sacred space of understanding, as he prepared to take the first real step forward into uncharted territory. The complexity of discovering his parents' lives drew him closer to an understanding of himself, igniting a hunger for truth that was undeniable and exhilarating. "Jake," Lydia's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Are you ready for what lies ahead?" The silence hung, suffused with unspoken possibilities and the weight of the unknown. At that moment, he realized he had moved from mere discovery to a profound sense of purpose. "I am," he asserted, glancing at the letters still in his hands, their truths lingering like potential coiled tightly within him. But what he didn't grasp entirely was that lurking in the depths of their paperwork lay not just family secrets and failures, but also the keys to unlocking a portion of himself he hadn't yet discovered, an emotional inheritance he hadn't expected to confront. As night draped the room in shadows, Jake understood that navigating the complexities of his family's history would come with unexpected revelations, ones that could either set him free or bind him further in the tapestry of their past. What challenges would he face once he began that confrontation? The answer loomed ahead, heavy with uncertainty, yet shimmering with the promise of profound transformation. Jake sat at the dining table, the absence of the usual holiday hustle and bustle stark against the backdrop of the freshly opened letters scattered across the surface. It was Christmas Eve, his family's favored tradition. He could hear laughter and cheerful chatter wafting from the houses nearby. But his own home felt eerily silent, a sanctuary turned graveyard for unresolved emotions. Lydia's presence was a comforting counterpoint as the night deepened. She was piecing together notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that, while everyone else was surrounded by family cheer, he was stuck grappling with the remnants of his past. "Why do you think those letters never got sent?" he pondered aloud, his fingers tracing the edges of his parents' unfinished thoughts. Were they scared to show their vulnerability even to each other? Or maybe they feared the repercussions of being honest, Lydia suggested, her eyes locking onto his. "It's a powerful thing, vulnerability. It can tear down walls, but they chose to build them instead." The weight of her insight settled over him like a heavy blanket, and Jake's thoughts spiraled. He had spent so long building impenetrable walls around his own emotions, mirroring the way his parents had, hiding their fears behind thick facades of success. "I have to be better than this," he murmured, his resolve igniting into clarity. "I need to stop being an echo of their lives and start forging my own path." The slow thrum of determination coursed through him. The time had come to act, to confront the executor, yes, but to also confront himself. "Then what do you want to do?" Lydia's voice drew him back, and he felt buoyed by the support she offered. Jake considered her question. The executor would want logical answers, a clear line of negotiation regarding investments and properties. But beneath all those layers of formalities, there lived a much deeper need to uncover connections, threads of love, struggle, and imperfection. "I want to ask about their hopes, their fears, and the reality behind the facade," he said, heart racing. Lydia smiled, a knowing light in her eyes. "Then let's turn those letters into questions that not only uncover your parents' lives, but also open new doors for you." For several hours, they constructed inquiries ranging from the intimate to the abstract. Why did they never share their dreams? What did they fear the most? Would they ever apologize for the discomfort their perfection created? As the clock ticked past midnight, Jake's excitement battled against a creeping apprehension. It was a stark contrast to the familiar comfort of the holiday spirit. His endeavor felt daring, like stepping off the edge of a cliff into unknown waters. Would the truths he unearthed shelter beauty, or would they expose deeper scars? The night grew heavy with anticipation as each question became a thread, weaving through the fabric of his family's past and connecting it to his future. But with every word penned down, he recognized a troubling realization coiling within him. How could he confront his parents' legacy without also confronting his own shortcomings, his own unrealized potential? "Jake, remember this," Lydia's voice broke through his reverie, earnest and clear. "This is not just about your parents. It's your journey too, a chance to own your narrative. In that moment, a precarious blend of fear and exhilaration blossomed within him. It wasn't simply about sifting through personal history anymore. It was a call to redefine his understanding of kinship on his terms, to choose kindness over bitterness in light of the revelations, a decision he had unwittingly sidestepped for too long. Kindness, he repeated, letting the word alone linger, heavy yet sacred. As daylight broke on Christmas morning, Jake stood at the threshold of his family history, and he felt the soft pull of connection threatening to guide him toward reconciliation. This was not merely upheaval, it was liberation, an untethering of consciousness stirring deep within him. But just as he committed himself to this transformative path, Jake realized there was one more hurdle to address, an object on the table that remained untouched, a hidden letter as yet unexamined, its folds crisp and enticingly secretive. What could it reveal? What lay in wait for him within those written folds, poised to shift his entire understanding yet again? Jake's hand trembled as he reached for the letter, a subtle weight hovering above the unfinished business of his family history. The worn paper crackled softly under his fingertips, each fold an invitation to explore a space he had previously avoided. He felt Lydia's eyes on him, an encouraging presence urging him to unravel the new enigma in front of him. He took a deep breath and unfolded the letter. The elegant handwriting was unmistakably his mother's, looping and swirling like the memories of childhood Christmases long gone. As he read through the elegant prose, his heart raced. The letter unfolded something deeply personal, something he had never been privy to, a narrative of hope intertwined with personal doubt. "I don't know how to be the perfect mother," the letter began, stained with emotions that painted a vivid picture of a woman burdened and yet full of aspiration. "Every moment is fraught with the possibility of failure, and I fear the shadows of my own inadequacies." At that moment, Jake felt a crushing wave of clarity. His mother had shared her struggles in secret, a parallel to his own fear of vulnerability. Drawn in by the rawness of her words, Jake turned the page, desperation igniting his swirling emotions. The rest of the letter detailed her dreams, a longing to connect more deeply with her children, to transcend the cold barrier formed by her efforts to present a polished exterior. Tears pricked at his eyes. For years, they had communicated through facades, constructing a family image instead of nurturing individual hearts. It became glaringly clear that his mother's desire for connection mirrored his own. "That's it," he murmured aloud, glancing at Lydia, who remained silently supportive. All these years of longing for connection, she was reaching out too. I thought she hadn't cared, but she had. She just didn't know how. The realization swept through him like a refreshing breeze, deepening the fissures of the years he had held onto resentment. The cycle of emotional silence was rooted in fear. Fear of disappointment, fear of vulnerability, fear of exposing true selves wrapped in knots of shame. "Your discoveries change everything," Lydia encouraged softly. Jake straightened, a new resolve knitting together threads of empathy and understanding. But this understanding was coupled with an unsettling urgency. He had to confront the executor sooner than he'd planned. It was imperative now to approach the meeting with a fresh perspective, one articulated through a lens of human complexity rather than mere logical transactions. As night fell, Jake began preparing for the meeting, each step a ritual of transformation. He practiced articulating those previously hidden questions, now imbued with a deeper significance. He needed to navigate the choreography of the confrontation, weaving through the threads of his parents' legacy while simultaneously striving to emerge as his own man. A thought flickered in the back of his mind. Would the executor react to his disclosed narratives? "It's not just about the properties, it's about understanding real lives," he whispered fiercely to himself in the bathroom mirror, a brief moment of existential reflection. He needed to dispel the cold distance others maintained in conversations about inheritance. The next day dawned with crisp sunlight breaking through the winter haze, illuminating his resolve. Jake was determined not only to learn about his parents' lives, but to advocate for the authenticity of their journey. He looked forward to meeting with the executor, yet an itch of uncertainty lingered. Would this step yield real growth, or would it reopen old wounds under the scrutiny of those who preferred the cloak of silence? As he buckled his coat and glanced at the clock, a mild anxiety pricked at him. There was no going back now. It was time to face the executor, and in doing so, confront every aspect of himself that had held him captive for so long. What lay behind that door of future conversations? Would he find acceptance, or would vulnerability reveal even scarier truths? The very essence of his struggle echoed as he took a deep breath. The time had come to face both his parents' legacy and the executor. Could he emerge liberated, or merely more entangled in the past? Jake paced nervously outside the building, the frosty air biting into his skin as he replayed the morning in his head. Today marked a crucial intersection of past and present. He had spent sleepless nights reassessing his parents' legacy and what it meant for him. His conversations with Lydia increasingly felt like a lifeline, guiding him through waves of uncertainty. But the true test came in facing the executor. Everything felt charged with meaning. His parents, their choices, and the ghosts that lingered in the shadows of their decisions. The weight of their unspoken truths pressed against him like a physical force. They had created a narrative built on facades, and now he sought to dismantle it entirely. Arriving at the office door, he hesitated, his hand poised above the handle as doubt gnawed at his resolve. What if he uncovered truths too painful to bear? He steadied his breath, recalling the empowering realizations derived from the letter, his mother's own struggles and desires to connect. With a swift, upward motion, he threw open the door, propelled by a determination to redefine his family's story. Inside, the executor, a middle-aged man named Richard, greeted him with a firm handshake. The polished conference room was stark and sterile, devoid of warmth, an embodiment of the professional mask that concealed the human complexities beneath. Jake took a seat, gauging Richard's demeanor. The man's face radiated professionalism, but Jake could sense an undercurrent of discomfort. The stakes were high, and he felt it reverberate in the air around them. "Mr. Harrison, I'm here to discuss the estate," Richard began, unfolding a series of documents with a clinical detachment. But Jake wasn't here for charts and bottom lines. How could he convey the depth of his parents' emotional world? "Before we dive into the legalities, I have questions," Jake interrupted, feeling the shift in his chest. It was now or never. Richard raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Jake inhaled sharply, the moment standing before him monumental. "I want to understand what drove their decisions, why they felt the need to craft such a perfect image, even at the cost of our family connection." He watched as Richard's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before settling into a contemplative frown. "It's not uncommon for families to create facades to shield their loved ones from harsh realities," Richard replied carefully, his voice laced with caution. "Your parents worked hard to provide." Jake pushed back, a surge of passion igniting within him. "But at what cost? They were people, flawed, imperfect. They had fears and dreams, and I want to honor that. How can we move forward if we bury the truth under legal jargon?" Richard shifted uncomfortably, and for a moment, the atmosphere thickened with tension. The truth, bright yet tangled, hung in the air between them. Unable to contain his emotions, Jake unleashed the frustrations he had held captive for too long. Their lives were not just a series of assets passed down. Just like their struggles, their love, and their failures all deserve recognition. The executor leaned back, crossing his arms, and for the first time, he looked Jake directly in the eye. "You're right. While the business side is important, I can see why it matters to you to unearth the emotional layers. If you'd like, that might actually inform our proceedings." Jake felt a rush of empowerment wash over him. The pieces were finally falling into place. This wasn't merely about estates, but about entwining his identity with his parents' journeys. I want to know more about their choices, what burdens they carried beyond financial implications. I want to understand who they were when the doors were closed, not just what was presented to the world. Richard paused, clearly evaluating Jake's sincerity, before nodding at length. That's a valid perspective. I can arrange a deeper look into their documents. For the sake of clarity, I can share some old correspondence. Those might outline their personal struggles. With a new determination thrumming through his veins, Jake nodded. I'd appreciate that. I want to ensure my decisions honor their memory and show the full scope of their lives. Discussions swirled, now anchored in transparency, and for each layer Jake peeled back, he felt an inch of his own identity reclaiming its rightful place. They spoke not only of assets, but of legacies rooted in love and the fear that drove his parents to shield their vulnerability from him. As the meeting drew to a close, Jake felt lighter, as though the burdens of secrecy were being lifted. Emerging into the sunlight, he inhaled deeply, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs as if bridging the gap between past chaos and newfound understanding. The journey was far from over, but now he would no longer walk it alone. Every step he took felt firm on the path of embracing vulnerability, not just within the confines of his family, but within himself. Change requires courage, and today he found that courage, the bravery to confront the complexities of familial love, to rewrite the narrative built upon whispered truths of the past, emerging not only as Jake the son, but Jake the advocate for authenticity and connection. As he walked away from the building, he smiled, ready to embrace the journey ahead. His parents' legacy no longer felt burdened by secrets. It blossomed with the promise of evolution. With each passing moment, he understood. Personal transformation rested in the power of honesty, even amidst the shadows of doubt. This was merely the beginning of his new narrative. And with that, the thought crossed his mind. He had to share this awakening, to inspire others still living in the silence of unaddressed truths. The world needed to know the power of voicing their struggles, of weaving individual stories into the fabric of human experience. That was the legacy he wished to forge, one of enlightenment combined with authentic connection. Each step resonated with conviction, pushing him to think of those around him eager to hear messages of personal growth and resilience. It was time to encourage others to break free from their silences, too. Now was the time to take action. He would share this journey far and wide. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share and help others embrace their own transformations.